Good morning. Welcome once again to our webinar series on GDPR, round 2, brought to you from number 1 Hammersmith Broadway up on the 5th floor with Dougie Reid. I am Mitch Richards.
And I'm Dougie Reid. And today we're going to be covering basically everything to do with training and GDPR. And we'll be looking at the resources that we've got available to us.
We certainly will, Dougie. That and much, much more. Just before we get into it, it would be fantastic if any of you have got some feedback from our last session on GDPR. If you could let us know what you thought in the comments. Our wonderful producer, John, who you can't see but is working with us here today, will be collating, and we will be attacking those and answering those questions right at the end of the session. So please feel free to take your time, and whilst we're talking, come up with any questions, and we'll get to you at the end. So let's crack straight on, and I'm going to hand over to Dougie, who is going to be talking to you all about the SharePoint resource with the GDPR documents on it.
Yep, so whilst John gets that together and puts that on the screen, one of the reasons for using the SharePoint portal was to try and save on sending emails around with lots of documents and potentially sensitive information around the email platforms. So I created a SharePoint portal just to start people thinking about how to manage data properly. We also have an authorization structure based on permissions that I can then give people permissions to various different folders or documents. So it means that I'm now in control of those documents, rather than an email system where someone could forward it on to other people and it could go all over the place. So that's basically why we've set it up, really.
Sets quite a good precedence for data protection as a whole, really, doing it that way rather than having emails going around, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, with having a central location for resources, it's key to make sure that we've got control over it, but we also know where things are as well. Again, going back to that email example, that email could be forwarded very easily to a lot of other places. The sharing capability within SharePoint kind of, in essence, prevents us from doing that. So it can't allow it. It can only allow it out to people that I've got control over. So it's a great way of being able to do it. We can still do all of that collaboration that we might need to do, but it's controlled, which is the key thing.
Data security people taking it seriously from day one.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's try and maybe go into the SharePoint portal, if that's all right for John, just to fire that up on the screen. 1 second, it's almost there. No pressure.
So, Dougie, perhaps just for anyone not aware of what it is, could you just explain what SharePoint actually is, who it's owned by, and how it works?
Yeah, so this is actually a site that's owned by BC Foxtrot within our own Office 365 subscription. So anybody who's got an Office 365 subscription can set up a SharePoint portal that they could be able to use to share documents and things with their customers or whatever, instead of using email platforms when they're sending documents. So I was over at Instrumental a bit earlier this morning, and they need to share data with a third party, and delivering some type of SharePoint portal would be a perfect example of how they could manage that interaction. Not only do we have SharePoint, but we've got Google G Suite as well, which can do exactly the same type of thing. Again, making sure that we control those permissions to files. But using that type of system, that sharing capability and that collaboration,
We're just being told to hold by producer John, who's working tirelessly in the background to make sure you guys are getting the best experience possible.
Your
there.
audio went off, it's back on now.
Okay, apparently the audio was off, but now it's back on. Great.
Awesome. So, this is the folder structure within the document library. Again, you may not be able to, as some users, you may not be able to see all of the different folders within the structure. But essentially the key ones are the generic documents folder and the organizations. So the generic documents is where we'll put most of the stuff, most of the templated stuff that people can then use and consume. And the organizational folders, when we go into them, you'll see that there's multiple folders for all of the different ventures. And essentially they show if we need to do any work with those ventures, we'll drop the documents into there. So that, again, there's some security inside that. And only people inside the organization will have been given access to those folders.
So just to confirm, Dougie, that means that not everyone's information is going to be accessible to everyone. Absolutely. If you're part of a BC venture, you'll only be able to see information pertaining to your venture.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So let's just drop into the generic documents folder, because that gives us a bit of a structure of the things that we've got inside there. So we have a number of different folders within there. A third party where we might have an NDA or a data protection. Let's go in there actually. Why not? We're in a demo.
Check it out.
We?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's see what's going on.
So there's a data processing agreement template within there. There's some procurement policy notes that came from the Crown Commercial Services that Simon Merrick mentioned last week. I put that inside there. And then there's also an NDA document there that we're pulling together for BC entities, kind of to have an NDA between them. So it would be kind of a BC to BC based NDA data processing agreement. And there's a template basically in there so that people can go in there, take it, and then obviously read through it, check it, fill in the various different bits and pieces that are relevant to them, and then they can establish that non-disclosure agreement, data protection agreement.
Okay, so just an example of where that would work. Would that be used in an instance where one BC venture is doing some work on behalf of another BC venture, absolutely, and it's just an agreement between the two parties
absolutely,
there?
Absolutely. Okay. So there's a variety of different interactions. It might be BC Talent, for example, providing recruitment services to an organisation. So they would have that agreement between the two parties. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So let's go back up to the generic documents. I've also put in a data flow mapping folder. So we have a Visio diagram. Not everybody will have Visio, but I thought I'd just put it in there. What I will do, I'll convert that into a PDF as well, so people can at least see what I've done and how I've done things. We're going to look at this next time, aren't we? We kind of go in detail with the data flow mapping. So we won't dive into these at the moment, but there are BC examples built up there for both the base or corporate information, product information, so the product that entity is selling, and also a sales marketing type breakdown of the data sets. And then we've got a purposes sheet which defines all of the different purposes under the GDPR that why we're processing data, along with data retention and legal basis for doing so. So all of that stuff is I've been going around a number of groups a number of ventures to be able to pull that examples of those together. So they're not finished, but they're starting to be formed. And as I say, we'll go into that in more detail next time.
Sure. So to give you a little bit of background, actually, it might be really, really handy to just get abreast of those documents that are in there, so that you're prepared for in 2 weeks' time when we talk about how to conduct your data flow mapping and auditing exercise. And we'll have a couple of special guests from a BC venture who are already well underway doing that.
Absolutely. Okay. Next folder is policies. So the policies that we talked about last time are the majority of them are in here. In fact, all of them are in here. I think I've sneakily also put in a bring your own device policy inside there as well, and an encryption policy. So these are, again, are templated policies that you can come in, take, and then the right answer is for all of your staff to read and accept these policies to make sure that they've understood how the organisation would deliver these particular elements of the GDPR. So yeah, those documents are there. If people want to use and abuse, they can do. If they want to just take them as they are, then that's great as well. So.
Brilliant. And so, Dougie, will these documents help ventures to put together their own privacy policy where they would put on their business's website, so that consumers can come and look through there and see what our obligations are with regards to their data?
Yeah. So there's no reason why you couldn't use the data protection policy on there if you wanted to. The key document and the key article to be able to put up on a website, for example, to tell people, inform the data subjects around what they should or could do with interacting with the data controller, is the privacy policy. Now, we haven't got one of those in there just yet. It's one of those things that keeps on falling off my to-do list. Well, not falling off my to-do list, but keeps on going down on my to-do list. But it's going to be done tomorrow morning. So again, we'll release it into there, and people will then be able to pick it up from there. And that would basically be a template for people to maybe copy and paste elements of it and form it into their own, however they want to display that to the world.
That sounds great. So as a BC venture, I'm sure a lot of the guys on the webinar are thinking, well, how can I get access to this resource? How can you get me involved in that?
So I think we're going to flash up an email address right at the end. So just let me know, really. We've also got a risk management template and security incidents as well that I've updated the other day. So there's a template and a log. Again, copy and paste, use and abuse within there, and then there's possibly some links to our webinars within that folder as well.
Perfect. So just in case you needed to see it a second time round, I know I'll be watching them again, most certainly. They're certainly going to replace the Star Wars trilogy at the top of my favourite things to watch. So Dougie, does that take us through everything on SharePoint that ventures are going to need to see for now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there will be more documents dropped in there as and when. And updates will happen, and hopefully I'll communicate those to the relevant people. But keep on looking. But hopefully, fingers crossed, it's a great resource to be able to go in and take various different bits and pieces and have those available if people need to.
Okay, brilliant. So now all of you know exactly where all the technical documents and templates are kept. And if you don't have access to them now, you will have access to them very, very shortly. So now it's time to talk about how you can make sure stakeholders within your own business are aware of what your obligations are under GDPR. It's really, really important that anyone who has anything to do with using customer data, sales leads, employee data in any way, shape or form are aware of their obligations. Just as a reminder, the consequences for non-compliance are dire, aren't they, Dougie?
They certainly are. There's a lot of dires on that script that you've put on there, but there's a lot of dires.
So exactly how dire are we talking?
So if we're talking about something that infringes the rights of the data subject, we're talking of up to 20 million euros or 4% of global turnover. So that's quite a big fine, and yeah, it's there to be dissuasive and effective. So that's the highest level, and that's for any infringements of data subject rights. If we go slightly lower, if we've maybe not done some of the organizational work, so the relationship between the data processor and the data controller and those types of things, so organizational failures, I suppose, then that's a slightly lower fine.
How much lower are we talking?
So it's half. Which sounds like a wonderful thing, but it's only up to £10 million or 2% of global turnover. So it's still got some teeth.
That's a lot of money.
It certainly is. I don't think they're going to be fining people at those levels just yet. if we look at the history of the Data Protection Act, so that was set up in 1998, which is 20 years ago. So I think what they're doing, they're planning for the future within the GDPR, the scope of the GDPR. So it may be that they don't find people right away at those levels, but certainly possibly over the 20-year period, it might be that happens, and 20 million euros is the higher level. So yes, we may find that's there.
Wow. So there you go. Just to confirm, guys, that's 20 million euros or 4% of annual turnover, not profit, turnover, and 10 million euros or 2%. Dare I say, ain't nobody got time for that.
Absolutely.
So with that said, Dougie's actually pulled together a really, really excellent resource around just gaining awareness on GDPR, and it can be really, really easily digested. I'm by no means an expert in GDPR or data protection, but I've used these resources to write a lot of the blogs that I've been putting up on LinkedIn around GDPR, and there's lots of other really, really useful information on there that's actually, dare I say it, quite engaging for what is essentially a really, really dry topic, data protection. So we're gonna show you guys how that works now, and Doug is gonna get in the driving seat once again and take you through the Hive Learning GDPR awareness resource.
Thanks, Mitch. So yes, I'll just bring this page up. So this is the Hive Learning application. So if you haven't seen it, it's very good, but it will allow us to be able to build a really good resource level of all of the artifacts and things that we might want to show within the area of data security and also GDPR. And it's great, not only do we have lots of content within there, we've also got quizzes at the end, and we can create reports based upon those people completing those quizzes. So here's the first kind of set of slides. So I've been slowly adding various different organizations within to Hive Learning. So we've done Phosphor, Instrumental, I think Matthew Said's been added in there, and Hive as well. Hive Learning themselves have been added in. So we're adding more and more organizations on. If you want to be added on there, then please let me know securely. So we need a secure list of email addresses because we wouldn't want to share those over an email platform. So if you don't know how to do that, then contact me and I can then talk you through how we can do that in a secure way. But essentially we need a list of email addresses, and then we can add those people onto the Hive Learning app and give them access to this resource. They will get an invite, and then once they've got that invite, they'll be able to get into the actual resources.
Sounds great.
Should I dive in?
Let's dive in. Let's see what's going on.
So within here, we've got three main topics. So we've got basic security awareness, we've got cyber security alerts and updates, and also GDPR awareness. So as a kind of a base principle within the GDPR, basic security awareness is key. So that's why we've put this particular pack together. So what does this do? It basically goes through all of the different elements of standard organizational security that we would want to know about. There's a whole host of videos in there from YouTube. There's organizational setup, so how we would actually do that within policies and those types of things. So how we would set up the organization and create an information security management system. And there's also things inside there like management of passwords, malware, phishing examples, ransomware, and there's lots and lots of other things that I'll drop in here. One of the great things around Hive Learning is that I can add cards, people will get notified, and then people can obviously go in and learn more. So it's not just a one-stop kind of or one deliverable, it's going to be a constantly evolving thing. For example, the more recent security alert around the Russian state-sponsored cyber actors threat, which has happened certainly I suppose it was 2 days ago. I've added some cards in there, but what I'll do is I'll put together that particular issue is utilizing a man-in-the-middle attack. So it's something that we haven't got in there. So I'll update the content as we go and put more things in there. But hopefully this will give you a really good understanding from basic security things with hopefully fun videos, fun informative videos. And that's basically what we've pulled together within there. Right at the end, we've got a quiz. So
everyone loves a quiz.
Absolutely. And it's very important because that then demonstrates to whomever needs to be demonstrated to that we've actually done some awareness training. So doing the quiz right at the end is really, really important. And as I say, I can create a report on that, and then if people needed that data, then I can then deliver that to them, i.e. who's passed the quiz or who's performed, who's done the quiz and who's been through the courses.
Well, that's pretty cool. So actually, a lot of the people on the webinar today will be able to see via you who within their business has actually taken the time to do this and can therefore pester people who haven't done it yet to get on board and complete the certification.
Absolutely. So that's the base security awareness training. I'll quickly dive into this cyber alerts. So I'm signed up for the US certs email list, and basically every so often, whenever necessary, the US certs will release various different security updates for a variety of different things. It could be Windows needing some patching. It could be Chrome having an update, or it could be some other threats like the Russian state-sponsored threat, which is down here, which I've updated on there. What will happen whenever I get an email that's relevant? I'm not going to publish all of them because some of them are not really relevant to the wider group. Some are specific services or specific devices, but some are general ones like this Russian state-sponsored attack. So I'll publish these within Hive Learning, and everybody will get a notification when that comes through. The final one is this GDPR awareness. So again, I'm releasing more and more data inside this area all of the time. We've got a whole host of resources already in here, from what it is and all about the general things within the GDPR. But we've also got a number of other resources around data protection impact assessments, privacy policies, the marketing advice, and I've been dropping various other slides in there, or cards in there, as and when we've needed to, and as and when we've produced the information. Once again, a little quiz, which is always nice.
And you can see there on the screen that 19 people have completed it so far. So who are those 19 people? Are they people from BC? Or?
Yeah, all BC people.
Okay.
And again, I can create a report to be able to work out who's answered the quiz.
Well, brilliant. Well done to those 19 people for being so proactive.
Indeed. Right. So, world exclusive. We're going to release some new cards. So this is what I would typically do when we need to update some content. So I'm going to release 2 cards today. I'm going to release a security incidents process, and that's going to go into the security awareness, so into there, and also data breaches. Cards updated on data breaches and security incidents. So those will go straight into people's timeline, they'll go into the activity timeline. And they'll be available for people from now. So people can go in and have a look now.
So actually, I've looked at the data breaches card already. I had a little bit of a sneak peek on that. Again, some really, really good videos on there. There's one from John Oliver talking about the Equifax data breach, which happened a short while ago. So again, really, really digestible, really, really engaging content on there that shouldn't really be in any way taxing to get through for you.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm just reordering these slides so that they're nice and neat. Sorry, it's my OCD kicking in.
So whilst Dougie's reordering those, I just have a couple of questions of my own. So just for people who are on the webinar who may not necessarily have a great deal of time to get through all the stuff, what do you think, or what would you say, are the most important resources on this group, and why are they important?
So I think that the initial cards are probably the most important. So those are the key things, because that just gives you a really good overview of what's happening. And there's quite a few videos on there, but it's really important to get the base understanding. Then probably, if you're worried about the effects of an issue, then looking at that data breaches is really useful. The security incidents one is relevant. So it's mildly interesting that if you go through the data breaches card, quite a lot of those data breaches, it took a long time for the organizations to actually say what happened. So in the case of Yahoo, in 2016, they said, yeah, okay, 500 million of our user accounts had been compromised. In
500 million?
Oh yeah, 500 million. And then in 2017, they said, well, actually, it's probably closer to 3 billion. So that, and the issue actually happened in 2013. So it took them 4 years to actually say what had actually happened.
That's got to be illegal.
Well, I think that's for the courts to decide.
Okay.
But thankfully, that could have got us onto dodgy ground there.
Oh.
But the key thing is on any security incidents or security data breaches within GDPR, then we would need to have carried out an assessment. We would have needed to know about it first of all, obviously, but carried out an investigation, carry out an assessment, and then actually report it within 72 hours.
So 3 years versus 72 hours is...
Yeah. It was obviously a big data breach, but yes, under GDPR, that theoretically would be reduced down to 72 hours. That's 72 kind of normal hours, not working hours. So yes,
even at a weekend?
Even at a weekend. As soon as we've found out, and that could be anybody in the organisation as well. So anybody in the organisation finds a data breach somewhere, they need to tell people quickly. They need to know who their designated security officer is. If they haven't, then it's liable to be someone relevant within the organisation. But the key thing is making sure that someone has been notified and they act upon it, and they do an investigation, do an assessment, and then do the reporting.
Wow, food for thought there, Dougie. Thank you
Absolutely.
very much. So we can probably go back to the slide deck now, actually, that we're over on the Hive Learning group here. In terms of how ventures would use this information here, are they able to just send out messages internally to their own business unit and say, look, we've got this great resource on Hive Learning.
Absolutely.
You need to get involved and make sure that you understand what your obligations are?
Yeah. So I mean, normally when we add people to Hive, the right answer would be to send out an email telling them that they're going to be invited to the Hive, to the Hive Learning group, and they need to go through it, so prompt them a little bit, and organisations could do that when we add them to the platform. But yes, that would be the right answer. For some organisations, I've been going in and talking about it, so getting people to go through the slides or the cards first, and then me doing a bit of a briefing session and an answer Q&A session, really.
Okay, great. So if there are any ventures that would like Dougie to come in and talk about these things, how can they go about setting that up?
Just send me an email. I can sort that out. I can do quick demos and or hour-long sessions to make sure that people have been briefed. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, that sounds great. So hopefully that's going to get you all a little more clued in on how you need to approach your obligations under GDPR awareness within your own business unit there. So that brings us to the end of the session with regards to the content around the training documents and the resources. Like we said right at the start, if you do need access to those, please do get in touch with Dougie. If you need some access to Hive Learning, you can contact John Sargent right there. So his email address is up and he will point you in the right direction. What we want to do now is just give you a couple of action points for the next session. As we mentioned right at the top of the webinar, the next session is going to be focusing around your data mapping and auditing exercises, which you're going to need to do to make sure that you've got legal basis for processing all of that customer data that you're inevitably going to have in your CRM systems there. So if you do need any assistance with the training, please let myself or Dougie know via email. And the really, really cool thing about next session is that we're going to have some very, very special guests, as mentioned, who are already well underway with their GDPR mapping and data audit exercises. So we're going to be sitting here, the four of us, and we're going to be talking about how they've approached that and the sorts of challenges that they have faced in getting that off the ground. Obviously, we will be circulating the date, time, and agenda for that session next week, and it will be taking place the following week.
Excellent. We'll need a bigger desk.
We'll need a bigger desk, definitely. We'll need a wider camera, as well, potentially, and some more chairs.
John's not happy.
No, John's shaking his head.
Things.
But there you go. Cool. So we're going to go on to the questions, and hopefully we've got some in the chat there, in the YouTube window that have been collected by John throughout the session. So give us just a second, and we'll get those up, and we can start answering them for you.
John's frantically typing.
Oh, Simon Merrick. Thank you very much for your question, Simon. Is there going to be a corporate binding agreement with our operations in India for the group?
So I don't know if we'll go down the route of a corporate binding agreement. So a corporate binding agreement is a specific thing within GDPR which allows elements of an organisation, of a kind of an international organisation, to be able to have a specifically termed contract, the corporate binding rules, with entities that are outside of the EU. I suspect what we will do is we will create a very specific pack of appropriate technical and organisational measures to make sure that India is okay from an organisational setup, so policies and training and risk assessments and those types of things, and then the relevant data controllers, so the people on the BC side in the UK or wherever, will have various different blueprinted measures or blueprinted controls for sharing data. So, for example, if BC India are providing finance data or financial services, financial processing services, then we may have a blueprint of a terminal server which allows those people in India to be able to log on to that area, but they can't download any data. So the data is held within the UK and doesn't go abroad. And I think wrapping all of that together will allow us to demonstrate good technical and organisational measures for BC India. But I don't necessarily know if we'll go down the route of a corporate binding agreement there. Hopefully that answers your question, Simon.
Thanks so much for that, Simon. Great questions here from Greg. We've got two. So, first question, does the NA apply to external organisations as well?
I think that might have been NDA. Yeah, NDA, good. So, not at the moment. I think that's probably going to be the data processing agreement. That said, we do have an NDA template that Amelia generally uses for external organisations as well, and sometimes we have to adhere to other people's NDAs. So I'm sure that can be used, but we probably just need to check with legal on that and make sure that's okay.
Great. So another question from Greg here as well. In terms of policies, which ones need to be published on our site? So he means the business website.
Yeah, yeah. So on the business site, the only one that you actually need to publish under GDPR is the privacy notice or privacy policy. That's the document that tells people how they should interact with you, who you are, and what purposes under what purposes you're processing data. So that's important to make sure. You can also publish your data protection policy as well, if you wanted to give people more assurance around how you interact within your business. But the only one that you actually need to publish is that privacy policy or privacy knowledge.
Makes sense. That's great. And another question here from Johnny Wolf. Oh, this is a controversial one. So this is a Google versus Windows debate here. So Johnny asks, is G Suite as compliant as SharePoint?
Yes. I mean, I could go into all of the all of the various different elements of it. But yes, G Suite has got the capability of being GDPR compliant. They have done a lot of work around making sure that there are EU based terms and conditions and things that people need to sign up for. So yes.
Great. Well, that's all of our questions so far. If there is anything else, please do get in contact with us, and the email address is going to be popping up now. As mentioned previously, if you need access to the SharePoint, please do get in contact with Dougie Reid. His email address is right there for you all. And for Hive Learning, please contact John Sargent, and he will point you in the right direction with the relevant staff at Hive to get you added to that group. Thank you all so much for joining us. As mentioned, we'll be circulating the agenda for the session in a fortnight's time next week, where we will be talking about data auditing and mapping exercises with, as I say again, some very, very special guests from the BC group. Thank you very much. I've been Mitch Richards.
And I've been Dougie Reid.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you.